And we're live with another episode of Atwix Talks, number 4. I want to welcome everyone. Sorry for a slight delay. So my name is Bogdan. I'm the marketing manager for Atwix. And today I want to introduce you to our two amazing guests. It's Alexander Shkurko, tech advisor at Atwix, and Igor Miniailo, chief architect at Adobe Commerce. Today we're going to talk about an awesome topic called Eventing and Async Integration in Magento/Adobe Commerce. And to give you more perspective about why this topic is so cool and so interested, I want to give a word to you, Alexander.
Thank you. Hello all. Thank you for joining this event. And yeah, today we will talk about the very interesting, informative, and important topic for the e-commerce part of the business, and especially with the e-commerce that's built with the help of the Adobe Commerce. And the trigger for this meeting was the incredible article that Igor published just like a month ago. And the name of this article is Let's Talk About Eventing and Async Integrations. This article, just like a plan for our today's discussion, when we will discuss what does it mean that eventing and async integrations, and what kind of benefits this approach delivers to the business, to the e-commerce, and how we can use it in our implementations, what can we achieve with the help of it. And just to move forward, let's give over to Igor. The stage is yours, please.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Try to share. Okay, we have a lot of fractals, and now we need to switch to Chrome. Okay. Okay, so I assume that you guys can see my presentation. Can you please confirm, because I don't see chat, so if you verbally confirm, it would be great so that I can proceed further.
Yes, I can see some presentation.
Okay, great. So, probably first and foremost, I wanted to say, and I don't know whether there are people from Vinnytsia on the call, but what happened today is absolutely, what happened today there is absolutely terrible and horrific, and it's a pure evil, and I don't have words to express what I feel about it. But my agenda today is to talk about less important stuff, and probably I will stick to my agenda. And a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks ago, Alex pinged me regarding the article which I published on eventing and async integration of commerce with other systems, and he proposed to make a presentation regarding that, and I decided to make it a little bit more broader topic, especially taking into account that we don't have event in live, and we're supposed to bring event in a couple of weeks in a beta. I believe it's supposed to happen somewhere in August. To avoid any unnecessary speculation, I wanted to introduce, not to introduce, but also to cover App Builder, GraphQL Mesh, and First Extensibility in general, just to provide you a context of how we evolve in the platform, where we're going, and what you may expect from Adobe Commerce. And first of all, the whole essence of my today's presentation will be related to Adobe Commerce. It doesn't mean that in future we would not introduce any of those possibilities and capabilities for Magento open source. Potentially it may happen, But currently, the whole scope of my today's presentation related to Adobe Commerce. So, and to provide you as much context as possible, here is the agenda, and in the scope of agenda, I wanted to cover the existing integration patterns and how the integration patterns, like how people usually, what exactly people usually do right now to make the integration between commerce and external system, specifically systems which are covered by three-letter acronyms like Product Information Management System, ERP, OMS, inventory management, and so on and so forth. Also, I would provide very brief highlights for App Builder and how App Builder may be used for Adobe Commerce, but App Builder is not a specific tool for Adobe Commerce. The whole idea of App Builder to be cross-cutting tool across different products provided by Adobe, so that it may be applied for content as well and for other products from the DX stack. Then I want to cover GraphQL Mesh. And last but not least, specifically the topic regarding eventing and the article which I published a couple of weeks ago. So let's start from the covering the existing integration patterns. And in fact, there are three main integration patterns. And if you look at this diagram, and actually all the three patterns are depicted on this diagram. So that if you look from right to left, you may see that probably one of the most important pattern, which is implementation of the push pattern, where you may find some custom plugin being introduced for some in-process API like PHP service layer. And this plugin, the main responsibility of this plugin, just to intercept the API invocation and to send the payload, most probably the payload, maybe the result of this invocation to message queue, which is RabbitMQ in case of Adobe Commerce. And why the RabbitMQ is here is to prevent any latencies, to prevent any performance degradation at the time of execution, and to prevent any impact to the customer experience. And then there is some listener, and this listener gets the message from the message queue and then delivers this message or update to the third-party back-office system like order management potentially. And this is pretty typical integration pattern when, for example, you have an integration between Adobe Commerce and, let's say, third-party order management system, and all the orders being placed at Adobe Commerce need to be synchronized with this order management system, so that you have a plugin which intercepts all these newly created orders. Those orders sent to message queue, and then listener deliver these orders, maybe in bulk, maybe not on the very atomic level, but gathering them in a bulk and deliver them into the third-party system. Another pattern is when you make the integration in a sync way, in the synchronous way, and in this case you have the plugin, and this plugin makes the direct call to the third-party system. When it may happen when you need that sync integration, and you may need to get, for example, you have an integration with standalone shipping system, and you need to provide shipping rates, and these shipping rates need to be rendered immediately for a customer at the time of checkout, so that there is no possibility to make this integration async. because you will provide some inbound data, and that external system will immediately provide you some shipping rates based on the weight, based on the number of items you would like to deliver. And in this case, you may have a custom plugin which will directly access this third-party system. And last but not least is both of this approach, the first and second, are push approaches, so that we are pushing data from the Adobe Commerce application into the third-party back-office system. While contrary to that, there is a pull approach when you have an API poller, and which is part of the integration layer, and this poller periodically retrieves data from Adobe Commerce. It may work perfectly well for products and orders, because for product and orders we have updated add attribute, and potentially you can retrieve all the relying on this attribute and storing in this integration middleware the date and time of the last synchronization. You can retrieve all the orders, for example, which were created since the last synchronization. This is pretty great approach from the standpoint that you don't need to write any line of code of PHP logic on Adobe Commerce, and potentially you can do it completely without PHP customization on Adobe Commerce side. And when I say that this is great that we are not writing any line of PHP code, this is not because we don't like PHP anymore for some reasons. No, PHP is a great language, and especially the latest version of the PHP, like 8.1, and that's why we highly encourage everyone to upgrade to the latest version of Adobe Commerce, which is 2.4.4, or Magento open source if you guys use Magento open source, because this support is available for both Magento open source and Adobe Commerce, because PHP 8.1 is great from the performance standpoint, from memory usage standpoint, from all different standpoints. PHP 8.1 is great, so that we really encourage you to get all the benefits from the latest and greatest which happen in PHP world, right? And specifically, and that's specifically why we want everyone to get all the benefits and to be beneficial of using the latest version of the software products, not sticking to the outdated version of the of the product. That's particularly why we are so encouraged to use different integration and customization technique, which don't immediately change the code base of Adobe Commerce, because usually all those integrations introduce some level of fragility, and because this level of fragility usually later on it prevents for a merchant to upgrade the platform frequently, and this is one of the main reasons why most of the merchants stay on the previous versions of the system. That's why we still love PHP, but moreover, we just want to have everyone to get all the benefits using the latest version of the PHP. And integration and auto-process extensibility is one of the main tools which would help us to achieve this goal. Okay, so now let's talk about App Builder, because App Builder is one of the main mechanisms which help us to achieve this goal. Writing extension and customization not directly impacting the Adobe Commerce code base. And first of all, I'm not sure whether all the people on the call and who listen to this conference maybe afterwards know and understand what App Builder is. So that the brief review. So App Builder actually is the entire framework which provides Adobe Console, CLI, It provides capability of ID plugins and for code development, deployment, debugging, and so on and so forth. And it provides a possibility for UI as well, so that single page application where you can have your own UI for your own application, and this UI will be hosted on CDN. So that this is entire set or entire kit of different tools which would help you to better develop your cloud native applications. So what can you build with App Builder? And as I already mentioned, it can be a great solution for either single-page applications, which are hosted on some CDN, or it may be a good integration layer between some systems like Adobe Commerce and maybe some other Adobe products like AM, which is a content product, or it may be a set of third-party services or products. And App Builder provides for these purposes serverless compute functionality, which may be a good way for ETL, which stands for extract, transform, and extract, transform, and load process to map APIs of one system to API of another system, which is pretty typical for integration scenarios. So here are a set of different components provided in the scope of the App Builder. So here, as I already mentioned, you may see CLI and SDKs, which supposed to simplify work for developers. Because as you may know, when you start working with microservices, one of the biggest and the most complex part is deployment, is CI/CD for this application, and DevOps become a real issue sometimes. So this is exactly what App Builder is supposed to address, introducing the set of SDKs and CLIs. And also, App Builder provides own serverless compute framework, which is right now represented as Node.js, so that you may expect that you will have a Node.js and you will provide server-side JavaScript for development. Again, DevTools, and specifically there are some debugging tools for Visual Studio Code, VS Code, which are already pre-baked as a plugin, so that you may get all the benefits using DevTools development for App Builder. And you may also get very simple way to publish and consume events emitted by Adobe products. And also we are introducing the support and coverage for third-party events as well. And as I already mentioned, there is a set of UI-based components, which are React-based. And this piece is a Spectrum UI framework, which is also part of the App Builder. Here's again another.
Igor, sorry to interrupt you. May I ask a question? Because I think the majority of our audience want to know a little bit more about three things. The first of all, wow, thank you, because this is really beneficial from my point of view. And I see that with this setup, the Adobe Commerce provides a lot of new functionality and possibility for the e-commerce business, which is now modern, especially of the quit area, because it boosted a lot. So my first question about the SDKs, can you please just like add more details about what kind of SDKs we will get, and what languages we can use to work with App Builder components.
Yeah, and by the way, the Adobe CLI is open source and it's hosted on the public GitHub, so that you may, for example, go and see it here. So this is AIO, and you may see the different set of plugins. So this is public repo, so that you may see this is not under corp domain, and you may see here a set of tools and integrate and how these tools integrated with Adobe products, different Adobe products, not solely with commerce, but also with content, with analytics, with customer journey, and so on and so forth.
Great.
Those tools and dev experience coverage is also increasing, so that currently we can say that we have some backbone or frame, and we are getting more muscles on top of this frame. As for the language, right now this is JavaScript, and this is kind of a choice of Adobe for a language to be used for third-party developers. One of the reasons is that because you may use JavaScript for both front-end development and customization, same as for back-end development and customization. There are different conversations regarding supporting other languages as well. Currently, those are only conversations. Potentially, it's possible because of the platform being used under the hood for making this happen, specifically for serverless compute. Because we use OpenWhisk, and OpenWhisk supports, for example, even PHP as well. But I would not be over committing and promising that PHP at some point of time will be supported, because first of all, like taking into account that this one of the main idea for App Builder is unified experience across entire organization, not only for Adobe Commerce but across entire Adobe. That's why that's why the main idea is to introduce very similar dev experience across everything, so that we'll see whether those decisions like introducing new languages will be considered as a...
Okay. Yeah, I got your point. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think maybe this will be a great challenge for the community, because just you can provide some entry points, or maybe like auto orders for the PHP classes, and just like a new PHP Adobe Commerce App Builder framework, and the community will drive it. Why not? Because it's also very interesting, and from my point of view, it's cool. Maybe in future we will have this. What do you think about this?
Maybe, but you also just need to consider that this PHP will be a little bit different, because it will be async PHP. It would be not the PHP we used to see right now, where we have the sync execution flow, while it's gonna be more like Node.js like PHP, so that it still will require some mind shift to understand it and to make it work with it.
Yeah, because this approach requires asynchronous actions, and with the new PHP async, and I believe with the PHP 9, we'll get a lot of new functionalities that we can use in order to build stable application with the highest performance level. Okay, I do not have questions about the SDKs. Please, guys who just on our event, please write your questions in our chat, and we'll discuss them. But I have a question about the EDA plugins. So we have right now Magento 2 PHP Storm plugin, and maybe you have some information about another IDEA plugin that we can use for App Builder. Maybe in the future we will have the App Builder PHP Storm plugin.
Maybe. As far as I know, currently we don't have a plugin for PHP Storm. So the only plugin I am aware about is for Visual Studio Code. But yeah, potentially why not? And especially taking into account that PHP Storm plugin is such popular across communities. So, and this is completely driven by community. So potentially it's something that we may envision for future.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your answers. I think that publish and consume custom events we will discuss later, because I have a strong feeling that you have such slides in your presentation.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So then maybe just let's proceed with the next slide. Thank you, Igor, so much for your answers.
Yeah, no problem. And by the way, this is actually great if you guys have any questions. And moreover, guys, feel free to send those questions in chat so that Alex may interrupt me because I don't see chat, and ask those questions while we're in the middle of the presentation, discussing the specific slide, so that it might be a good discussion. So yeah, it's just another way to describe the architecture of the app builder, and you may see that there is kind of a separation between UI and the single page side, or client side and the back office side, and the back office side is mostly represented by Node.js. And additional capabilities like data storage, and data storage is currently only key value storage. There is only file. There is also file storage, possibility to listen custom events via Adobe I/O events. Third-party APIs. Currently, we don't have probably the vast majority of third-party APIs being covered, but this is exactly where we are trying to increase our muscles. And of course, APIs provided by Adobe services. Oops. Yeah. So again, 3 typical scenarios where you may use App Builder for. This is integration scenario where App Builder application is being used as a middleware integration layer. This is core service extensibility, where you somehow would like to adjust or augment the out-of-the-box implementation of some service. We also use App Builder in the scope of GraphQL Mesh, and I will mention about this later on. And also user experience extensibility when you want to implement some either a single-page application or some part of the application, like component which you want to inject into some scenario, and where this augmentation, where this component you would like to extend the functionality for both admin UI or storefront UI. This is how App Builder CLI looks like, and for CLI you need to install Node.js. And you may see how the CLI AIO is installed, and this AIO installation has pre-baked plugins, and those plugins provide and introduce some capabilities to work with different Adobe products. And I really encourage you to go and look through the documentation, where you can read all those capabilities provided by AIO API. But in fact, this is kind of must-have for Adobe development, and not only for commerce, but as I already mentioned, we have an idea to unify the process of development for different Adobe products, and especially right now we see more and more merchants getting both content and commerce together, and one of the goals is to unify the process, how third-party developers introduce extensibility for AM, and same as to let them do the same for Adobe Commerce. Yeah, so this slide is supposed to summarize what I said previously regarding the unification experience, and as a result, when all this extensibility and integration happens not as a part of Adobe Commerce monolith anymore, but this is completely standalone when it's separately provisioned and deployed. We don't have our monolith getting skinny and skinny. We don't have a lot of customizations on top of the monolith, particularly fragile customizations, which may prevent merchant to upgrade the core often, so that ideally later on it will give us a possibility to provide an easy upgradability of the core of the system, so that we are not saying about deprecation of monoliths anyway, but the main idea we are trying to achieve is an easy upgradability of the monolith.
Igor?
Yep.
We have a question. The first question is for the previous slides about the JavaScript, and the question is, will you do you plan to use the TypeScript or just like a pure JS?
Excuse me, can you say it again? Sorry, I missed your question.
JavaScript, TypeScript, or just like a pure JS?
As far as I remember, it's both. It's both in JavaScript and TypeScript.
Okay. Thank you. And about the monolith, it's what benefits from your point of view we have with the monolith support and not just using the microservices? Because like it's tendency to say that the monolith is bad and microservices are good. My point of view, that both are great for the specific areas, but what do you think about this?
To be honest, this requires probably a separate presentation. This topic requires a separate presentation because there are so many things need to be taken into account.
Yeah, definitely.
Answering this question, but there are definitely, like everything in software architecture is a trade-off. That's why all this flexibility and scalability of microservices come with a cost, and this cost is very sophisticated deployment, a very sophisticated price because it definitely increases the learning curve, increases the price for supporting infrastructure and so on and so forth. That's why it's there are still a lot of type and the size of businesses where monolith is a perfectly fine solution. That's why we, and merchants or third-party developers who represent a merchant usually have to be very careful making the decision whether they really need a microservice architecture, because everything. That's why we don't want to decouple monoliths physically, and most probably you would not see Magento as a set of microservices, meaning micro as a single responsible services, because Magento is pretty big, or Adobe Commerce, because even Magento we mean open source code base, but if you're talking about Adobe Commerce, this code base approximately 7 million lines of PHP code, only PHP code. So it's very hard to decompose such monoliths onto microservices, and moreover, when you will decompose it, it would be very, very hard and expensive to maintain this set of microservices. So maybe you need to be the size of I don't know, Amazon or Walmart to support all this infrastructure.
Yeah, great answer. And it's also a good idea to have another presentation and talk about the monoliths and microservices. So maybe in future, if you will have a time and desire to talk about it, we definitely can do this, because this thing is like just it's a great question, and to overview it, we can deliver a good vision not only for the developers but also for the business owners, because as you mentioned, it's very important to decide with what type of architecture you will move forward, basic architecture you will move forward. So yeah, okay, great. And yeah, please proceed.
I can only tell you I can only tell you that potentially what you may expect, that at some point of time we may release our monolith as a big macro service, so that this monolith might be mutable and it will work as a one thing, as one piece. But along with that, all the extensibility might be done on top of it in a purely out of process way, so that it will not be mutable anymore. And this is what we are considering. But again, this topic requires a separate discussion because there are still a lot of nuances. And but yeah, this is what we consider internally.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okie dokie. So let's go further. So probably I have too many App Builder slides. I realize this right now, but yeah, again, just to emphasize once again what exactly we would like to achieve. So right now you may see that all this customization and integration mostly happen in process, and all this custom code is a part of the commerce core. And by the way, that's another issue when we are facing with some escalations and some merchants who might be unsatisfied for some reason regarding performance. It's very, sometimes it requires a lot of profiling to understand the root cause of the performance issues, because sometimes the performance issues are not introduced by commerce core, but brought by some third-party extensions. But taking into account that these third-party extensions being part of the monolith, there is no kind of the strict boundary between monolith and the code base and the execution of this third-party extension. That's why everything is a monolith, everything has the same execution stack. It requires some sophisticated tools to trace everything to understand where is the problem. With out-of-process extensibility, you out of the box you have this boundary because all these extensions are hosted somewhere. They're not collocated. They're not part of the monolith anymore, so that you may understand the root cause of the performance degradation quite easily. And that's only one of the reasons. And again, just to summarize everything being said about that, we want to get the modern storefront. And here you may also see that we may build and host modern storefront. And by building, we may also say that potentially we can use App Builder as a server-side rendering tool as well for PWA application, and we use CDN for hosting of UI components provided by React Spectrum. Of course, manage, extend all Adobe and third-party APIs. And in general, we can provide to build cloud-native APIs and customizations. So now let's go and...
Igor, sorry, can you please step back? Yeah, about the modern storefront, will we have a possibility just to create our own storefront based, for example, on some React applications, or if, for example, we want to build a view store. So for me, this slide means that we will have an ability to create our own applications and use the App Builder APIs in order to connect, for example, PDP or home pages with it. Or I'm wrong?
No, you're absolutely correct. Moreover, and like in a headless world, it's very hard even to prevent somebody to build your custom third-party front end for your application, because as soon as you provide this decoupling, everything becomes a variable, and it becomes a substitutable part of your setup. And moreover, for example, if you go to documentation for, let's say, live search or PREX, so the product recommendations, which are SaaS services provided by Adobe Commerce, you may, even in our official documentation, you may see what events need to be supported by third-party front-end to comply with the services. So that, because with, for example, with product recommendation, we are emitting a lot of events, behavioral events, clickstream data events, and these events have own semantics, so that we provide we describe the semantic of those events. Just for example, if guys from View storefront decide to replicate those events and introduce the support for product recommendation, it would be possible for them. Moreover, I would not be probably sharing a lot of secrets, but right now even we are trying to consult folks from Hoover to introduce support of PREX and live search to Hoover.
Yeah, great.
So,
great.
We are completely inclusive from that perspective.
Yeah, it sounds really great because I see a lot of benefits in this structure and possibility to create your own, not maybe a storefront, but like a single React application. And this application can be used somewhere, not only on your laptop or just mobile browser. You can use it in the POS terminals in order to make the user experience, again, the user experience is the main thing, more comfortable. Okay, and I want to ask you about the API management. You mentioned that you can scale all Adobe and third-party APIs. Please just explain a little bit more about this part. What does it mean, scale? In that case?
So yeah, I am trying to find regarding the scaling API. So so at Adobe, we are trying to encourage and internally enforce API-first development, and especially, especially if we have out-of-process extensibility tools being used, it's just impossible not to enforce API-first development, because otherwise it wouldn't be possible to use out-of-process extensibility. Regarding the scaling, probably either I may phrase it incorrectly, but what I wanted to say is that we want to provide up to horizontal scalability for App Builder functions and for the serverless compute, because for us it's there is no problem to scale, especially because the vast majority of this App Builder serverless compute are stateless, so that there is no problem with replicating them and multiple instances of this function. That's why how the scalability going to be addressed. Scalability of the internal API, so the API of the underlying services like Adobe Commerce API and so on and so forth, it's still implementation detail of the specific product, so that introducing the mid layer or integration layer, you would not achieve immediately the scalability of your underlying service. But what you can do, you can unload some processing, so that and deliver it like in a bulk to your target system.
Okay, thank you again. A great answer. And another question. Is it a good time to talk about the migration? So because I'm interested in how to move the project, for example, that has 3 years history of extensive development, and how to adopt it for the app builder and how to migrate. Is it not the right time? I mean, by the right time, I mean, you have the slides and few next slides about this, or maybe it's not a time and we need another presentation.
This is actually a great question. And we usually facing this question from merchants as well quite often. And merchants, especially merchants, are very afraid of such a word as migration. They may call it M word, right? Because migration and especially replatforming is something which is pretty scary, because it introduces a lot of indefinite resource spending, indefinite time, and some level of uncertainty. And you guys know better than me that upgradability usually is something which scares merchants a lot, while migration probably scares them even more. That's why we want to prevent kind of such thing as a replatforming or kind of migration, so that we want to introduce a very smooth and evolutional migration, so that you may introduce introduce extensibility for component by component. Let's say right now we have some services like live search, that you may start using live search instead of out of the box Elasticsearch implementation, and it will move part of your implementation, part of your business logic to SaaS cloud. And to make this customization of the live search, for example, you may have some merchandising functionality or merchandising functionality on top of our search. You can do this customization via App Builder, and all this functionality will be forward compatible, so that we can guarantee that it would not be impacted with our future upgrade of Adobe Commerce core monolith, and it will be forward compatible in future, so that it wouldn't be really migration where you need to make a hard stop and start to upgrade functionality to the new Rails, while it's supposed to be quite smooth, and along each of those components by migration, you will get some additional business value, either with additional functionality and capabilities, which, for example, Live Search provides or P-Rex provides, or with additional. We'll come to eventing, so that you will see that we're also going to, for example, provide some out of the box APIs for popular 3-letter system acronyms. Like I assume that we'll introduce something for popular product information management, for ERP system, and those gonna be just connectors for Adobe Commerce provided out of the box, so that you may no need to install any Magento modules or Adobe Commerce modules or extensions, need to do it kind of low-level customization in PHP, but most of that logic will be provided via low-code out of the box.
Wow. It sounds amazing, really, because from my point of view, it looks like the struggling the monoliths, and at the same time you provide the anti-corruption layer, something like this, really. And
exactly. Exactly. So, and by the way, this is a great way to frame it. The whole idea of API layer and API first is to provide the anti-corruption layer for your implementation details hidden behind.
Yeah, great. So this approach is also one of my favorite, because using it, you give to business an opportunity to feel safe and be ready to any kinds of customization on the backside. And it's really important, especially when you have a large project with hundreds and hundreds of products per hour per minute. So yes, thank you so much. I do not have any other questions related to this slide.
Okay. So let's proceed to GraphQL Mesh. And probably the easiest way to define GraphQL Mesh is that you may consider it as an API orchestration layer. And GraphQL Mesh represented by multi-tenant SaaS service, which stores single-tenant GraphQL schemas per each merchant individually. And as I mentioned, it's an API orchestration layer, and what I mean by this is that this is a way how to merge and stitch the APIs provided by different sources individually. Like in this case, you may see that there is search, inventory, assets, and all of those sources and APIs exposed by each and every of those sources combined and stitched all together. So on the level of consumer, which might be PWA application or native application or point of sale terminal, you just get only one schema. You no need to manage different access to different APIs anymore, and you have only one access to this stitched schema, and you can use it. So that your front end might be pretty dumb, knowing nothing about all this complex infrastructure behind the scenes, that you may have many different services, many different third-party systems being involved, and it's still going to be only one entry point. And just an example. Yeah, so this is kind of a little bit more technical, while still it's architecture diagram. So here you may see that multi-tenant GraphQL service hosted behind the I/O gateway, Adobe I/O gateway, and it provides an access to different Adobe services. And also it provides the possibility to introduce third-party services as a part of the schema. And right now, as a part of one of the implementation for one of the biggest merchants we are working with at the moment, we are also using GraphQL Mesh, and we are combining our APIs, so that when I say our, I mean AM APIs, so the content APIs, with commerce APIs, with third-party system APIs, and all of those APIs exposed to headless storefront. And you may be wondering, what if any of the source may not expose GraphQL, but instead of GraphQL, it's going to be REST, maybe gRPC, maybe something else. It's not a problem at all, taking into account that we are using GraphQL Mesh. which is open source product, and GraphQL Mesh provides the possibility to convert literally every API format to GraphQL. They can even convert database schema to GraphQL, but we definitely don't encourage people to do it, because GraphQL schema is supposed to be an implementation detail, and we, even for in-process extensibility, we never encourage people to use our database as an API, but yeah, potentially it's even possible to do it with GraphQL Mesh, so that everything might be converted to GraphQL, so that everything might be stitched in one GraphQL schema.
Igor, I have a question
Sure.
related to the GraphQL schema. Can you please suggest something to read, to maybe or to how to practice creating a perfect GraphQL schema? Not maybe perfect, but good, because you said that everything should be converted into one GraphQL schema. But believe me, this is a really difficult step, because how GraphQL, it's pretty simple by syntax, but how to create a proper and good GraphQL schema for your needs, how to decouple the functionality, how to decouple the database. So maybe just like a brief best practices about the...
And, you know, like, you're right regarding that GraphQL, even so that the main idea of GraphQL is to be very, very simple and straightforward. It appeared to be very opinionated approach and a very opinionated solution, so that even internally in our organization, we have a lot of different discussions and arguing regarding how exactly GraphQL API should be built. And that's why, again, this is a topic which may require a separate presentation, but I'll just give you another example. Because last month, probably, we were actively discussing whether we need or no need to version our GraphQL. Because, you know, like, one of the idea of GraphQL schema that GraphQL should be versionless, meaning that you should not be introducing any big backward incompatible changes for your GraphQL schema. So that, and because potentially GraphQL supported, because like consumer request everything it needs, so that you may just deprecate something but not introduce backward incompatible changes to the schema. But when we started to talk about multi-tenant GraphQL service and saying that all different services like commerce monoliths, like live search, like some third-party extensions will be exposing some schemas which need to be merged all together, it's immediately appeared a question, what to do with services which don't version their GraphQL schema, because currently our live search, for example, doesn't version GraphQL schema, and they consider that their schema is always current, and they will just introduce forward compatible changes, and that's pretty much it. But when we're dealing with the schema merging, right, which consists from different sources and so on and so forth, you may even introducing forward compatible changes in one product like live search. Potentially these changes may lead to some backward incompatible or some unpredictable side effects when you are merging the schema, because even so you may already have some extension which introduce the same attributes and the same naming for queries or for attributes which are going to exist, so that you have a name collision, and this is hard to prevent. And taking into account that for our GraphQL schema, we would like to make a merchant or third-party developer to decide what the schema he or she wants to use, make the snapshot of the schema, and so on and so forth, so that prevent any unpredictable behavior which may happen along with always current schema and some changes which are constantly added without any notification for the third-party developer. We decided to introduce versioning for GraphQL, even so that we still keep enforcing that GraphQL schema should bring GraphQL schema changes should bring only forward compatible changes. So it's, and you may see, because we spent like several weeks discussing this topic, because some people even internally considered that it somehow violates the whole idea of GraphQL, so that you should be versionless, you should be always current, and so on and so forth. And that's just another example that all this GraphQL architecture might be quite opinionated. And even if you check how other big commerce solutions do GraphQL, you may also see that their approaches may differ, even with versioning. And versioning is actually the great example.
Okay.
I really, yeah. So it's a
sorry, just internet connection is bad, and just sorry for interrupting you.
Problem at all. So yeah, it's a great topic, and probably we need to have a separate presentation to cover it fully.
Okay, so then maybe we will meet each other this year 3 times, and yeah, this will be a good chance. First, let's talk about the GraphQL schema, then let's describe the monolith microservices benefits. Okay, but we have one question in our chat about the product itself, App Builder. When it will be possible for agencies, companies maybe, and just for the whole world to test the App Builder. So do we have any kinds of better program where we can, for example, download this SDK, use CLI, and try to build something with the help of App Builder?
Yeah, so, and by the way, at the very top right corner of the slide, you may see that the open beta, so that currently it states that it's beta, but in fact it's open beta. It started like 3 weeks ago, so that all the partners, agencies, may request an access to App Builder. And when I say they may request an access, they may ping, so that there is an article, and there is a clear way how partners may request this access, but you may directly ping Nishan Kapoor, who is a product manager and who owns this functionality from the product side, and he will grant you access via the fast track.
Okay, got it. Thank you. This information will be useful for the whole audience of this presentation and for those who will listen it later. So please don't hesitate and contact Adobe and try to be just like a tester of this App Builder. So thank you. I think I will have 2 questions about the GraphQL Mesh. So let's proceed.
Okie dokie. And yeah, so when I said that GraphQL Mesh is a great tool to stitch in the schema, actually the capabilities of GraphQL Mesh is far beyond only merging the schema. So that here you may see the type stitching, for example, which is more complicated. So that you may see here that there is a product type which does not have any knowledge about pricing, and there is a price service, for example, which introduces this notion of this minimal price, of final price, discounts, and so on and so forth. And GraphQL Mesh stitches the schema, and the resulting product type has everything provided by both services. And so that the requested query may contain both attributes belonging to catalog service and pricing service. And from the execution standpoint, it is great because even so that consumer like PWA application knows nothing that there are 2 services which process this request, but GraphQL Mesh definitely knows about it, so that GraphQL Mesh potentially here may execute two requests simultaneously, not sequentially, so that there will be one request going to catalog service, and at the same time there will be another request going to the pricing service, so that the whole execution time, the whole latency which consumer expects equals to the performance of the least performant query. So that if we, for example, have a pricing service which handles a request like for 100 milliseconds, and catalog service which handles a request for 125 milliseconds, so that taking into account that we issue those requests simultaneously, we most probably spend 125 milliseconds plus some fraction of time to merge the results and return it back to the consumer. So that it's pretty powerful tool, especially when you are relying on many underlying services and when you can parallel your request execution. And by the way, here's the QR code which you may scan. And by the way, I don't know, because for quite a while I considered that QR code absolutely outdated technology, and it was failed from the very beginning until COVID hit. And when COVID hit, everyone started to use QR code again. So that I'm trying to be to follow the trend, so that I decoded all the URLs which I have in my presentation with QR codes. So that following this QR code, you may go to GraphQL Mesh description and GraphQL Mesh documentation on Adobe documentation, so that it may be a good place to start for onboarding and starting to use GraphQL Mesh. And here on the left side of the slide, you may see how this mesh configuration may look like. So that here you may see, I hope you see it, I hope it's readable, so that it's a source to commerce schema, it's a source to AM schema, and this is a source to the live search schema. And for a live search, you may see that we are headers. You may specify what exactly Adobe Commerce website you would like to use, and what store view you would like to use, and so on and so forth.
And about Mesh, as I mentioned before, I have some questions. So is it possible to maybe in the future to create a plugin for the IDE or any kind of other system? And this plugin will provide us for functionalities that will allow us to generate the schema automatically. Because,
and by the way, the great thing that we already have a plugin for AIO. So for Adobe I/O CLI, there is already a plugin which helps you to manipulate the mesh. So that with that plugin, you may update mesh as soon as you introduce some changes to the sources and so on and so forth. So currently, you still need to use Adobe CLI, but I mean, potentially later on as a next step, going towards low code or no code development, it may be done as a plugin to some IDE.
What kind of services we can just connect to each other with the help of this system in order to get that?
So currently we are mostly focused on integrating on like content and commerce together, because those are two products which are used in conjunction quite often, so that we have quite, as I already mentioned, we have quite a lot of merchants who use both AM and commerce, so that one of the main goals is to provide the unified dev experience for across the board. But along with that, we part of our one of our goals is to introduce out of the box integrations with typical 3-letter system acronyms like PIM, ERP, and OMS, and so on and so forth. Probably I would not be mentioning throwing some names at the moment, because we are still working on those integrations, and these integrations will especially appear in the scope of Eventing beta, which not yet started and which is supposed to start in a couple of weeks. But yeah, you may expect that out-of-the-box integration APIs for PIM, for very popular PIMs and OMS system will keep appearing, so that you may just introduce a support and integration to your GraphQL Mesh with the PIM, for example. But currently, currently it's mostly Adobe products.
Okay, great. So we can just use all of Adobe products, for example, Adobe Experience Manager together with Adobe Commerce with the help of Mesh.
Yep.
Am I right?
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. I do not have any other questions about the Mesh. Let's proceed to event and eventing.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, and by the way, you see that I use another QR code, so that I'm trying to be as cool as possible, using the nowadays technology, or maybe not nowadays, but very outdated technology, which became very trendy again. I'll try to avoid any speculation, because some of the even technical approaches we like is a subject of change, and especially some of the things how we would like to implement eventing. But let me briefly describe you the essence of eventing, because like any Magento developer or Adobe Commerce developer knows that Adobe Commerce supports message queue, and there is a possibility, there is a support for RabbitMQ, and there are a bunch of different events and async jobs implemented out of the box in Adobe Commerce. And but till the moment, most of these async events and the async jobs actually being used to decouple job execution from job scheduling, to unblock a user who schedules a job, to let this user proceed for any other action, not blocking his or her UI with this infinite wheel spinning, and so on and so forth. So that by the way, the great example is, and by the way, I'm not sure whether you guys are aware, but I keep saying this again and again and again, that if you experience any issues with, for example, checkout implementation in Adobe Commerce, we really encourage you to look through our performance improvements for checkout, for quote calculation, for inventory check as well, and in the scope of recent improvements, which were part of the Adobe Commerce of 2.4.4 release, and that's another reason to upgrade to the latest and greatest version of the system to get all these potential performance benefits and unlock all the performance capabilities. Yeah, we tuned, and on our performance benchmark, we were able to achieve incredible, from my standpoint, the order throughput, which is 300,000 orders placed per hour, which is approximately 85 orders placed per second. So which is awesome, which is great. But yeah, so it was for specific merchant catalog, so that the catalog is not huge, the number of promotions is not huge as well. But here's the idea that we currently, until now, we are mostly using message queue to decouple especially heavy weighting processing from the main process, main thread being used by a customer to unblock all this heavy weighting processing from the main execution thread. While what we don't do at the moment, or we did not do before eventing mechanism, we did not make a lot of integration patterns based on the eventing. Of course, some people may do integrations based on RabbitMQ provided by Adobe Commerce, but from the security standpoint, we don't really encourage people to follow this practice, because when you are making an integration with some third-party standalone system, which is not collocated with Adobe Commerce, there might be some security risks when you are sharing the same message queue across different data centers and so on and so forth. So that usually is not the best tool to make the integration. But what we are doing in the scope of our eventing implementation, we are particularly going to address this gap, and we are going to bring Adobe I/O events, which is another great mechanism specifically designated to integrate different solutions. And when I say solutions, I mean both Adobe implemented and Adobe owned and third-party owned with across one another. The interesting challenge which we faced is that taking into account that Adobe Commerce right now has several hosting models, we may end up having different eventing and different event types. Because even right now, you may consider that Adobe Commerce might be used as a on-prem solution, so that a merchant may host it on his or her own hosting, so not Adobe Commerce Cloud. Or maybe it's even Adobe Commerce Cloud, but there are any other SaaS services being used in conjunction with Adobe Commerce. So that this is kind of a monolith and nothing but monolith, right? And in this case, a merchant or third-party developer or an agency who works on behalf of this merchant may be interested to expose some Adobe Commerce events and deliver those events to some external systems. And probably the most popular example is synchronization of orders placed Adobe Commerce and deliver those orders to external order management system or ERP. So, and also we definitely anticipate that there are already a bunch of solutions. And as you, Alex, mentioned regarding the migration, we anticipate that existing merchants who use Adobe Commerce Cloud, they already have some integrations in place, and these integrations most probably follow one of the three patterns which I mentioned from the very beginning of my presentation, so that they most probably rely on a process extensibility, and there are some extensions and some Magento or Adobe Commerce modules being installed as a part of Adobe Commerce. And we want to provide some business value even for those merchants, not only for fresh installations. So that what to do and how exactly we may address this specific case. So that this specific case we would like to address, and again, we don't want to let third-party developer or merchant to make any imperative changes to Magento code base, meaning that we don't want to change code, we don't want to make any in-process changes to the monolith code base. So that what we want to do, we want to provide some declaration and we want to let third-party developer or merchant to specify what specific events this merchant wants to expose outside of Adobe Commerce, and those events gonna be delivered to App Builder, to IO events, and then it might be delivered to App Builder, and App Builder may do some either processing, or maybe in this case App Builder function may work as an integration layer, matching the API and the payload provided by Adobe Commerce to the payload required by some third-party system.
Mm-hmm. Igor, can you please add more details about the event? What does it mean? Event is just event when something happened, or event is something that happened and also has some data, like in Magento, because it's very important to have to be on the same page with naming and with understanding what does event mean.
Yeah, and actually this is a great question, because sorry, I wanted to prevent us from further distraction because of the popping up messages, and taking into account that the working day already started at the Adobe office, so that I expect that there are going to be more pop-ups. So yeah, but that's actually a great question from the semantic standpoint, because what we figured out that the event, or the essence of the event, is different if we are talking about Adobe Commerce or Magento monolith extension, or when we are talking about the SaaS platform. And we already have SaaS services, and some of those services already integrated with Adobe Commerce. We are ingestion pipeline, and we have a bunch of such services like live search, like catalog, like PREX, and like inventory, like sales channel. So that, and for those services, and that's why the essence of the event is different. Moreover, when we are talking, and this is exactly I wanted to describe here on this slide and on the second slide, because like when you consider that you're building SaaS ecosystem where there are a bunch of services, and some of the events being emitted by, let's say, checkout, right? And you would like to deliver this newly created order across different Adobe services, like there might be an analytic service, there might be a product recommendation service, which may need to get this notification, and so on and so forth. There might be, let's say, service responsible for cart abandonment, whatever. The most important thing in this case is event unification, right? So that if and this is very important to guarantee that newly, like the new order event created or emitted by one of the service is one and only one, so that there are no different semantics representing new order. That's why if let's say we have Adobe Analytics system, this Adobe Analytics supposed to rely on only one semantic of new order event. While, as you may know, in Adobe Commerce, we have right now a bunch of APIs, so that we have a lot of different APIs. We have APIs provided on the level of service layer. We have an APIs provided. We have APIs provided on model layer. We have APIs provided on resource model, and so on and so forth. So that potentially there are multiple ways to intercept and retrieve data of newly created order, so that there is no only one API how you can achieve it. That's why, and here, that's why there is no only one API. And moreover, assuming this variety of different APIs doing pretty much the same, but having different semantic, having different data payload, we may see that some of the integration, for example, are based on PHP service layer, while other integrations may be based on a resource model API and pluginization of that API, or maybe at some event. And when I say event, I mean in-process eventing mechanism, which we support. So like observer of product after save model or order after save model, something like that. So that there are multiple ways how you can achieve pretty much the same. And taking into account, again, we are trying to avoid migration or replatforming as much as possible. That's why we don't want to establish a new API and say that this is new way or this is the only way of doing things, because we know that we cannot enforce it. And moreover, it's going to be still pretty big destruction for existing implementation, existing integration, and so on and so forth. So that's why we consider that, in fact, there are two types of events. Events for when people want to extend out of the box PaaS or On-Prem or Adobe Commerce monolith implementation and APIs. And by APIs here, I mean, first of all, PHP service layer. And second of all, we are considering, that was one of my open questions in the article which I published, whether we need to support other APIs as well. Because right now in Adobe Commerce monolith code base, a lot of entities are being marked with PHP annotation as an API, like models, again, resource models, collections, so on and so forth, some handlers, helpers, and potentially there is completely crazy idea saying that all the entities marked as an API should be possible for third-party developers to say that I want to listen this specific event, like some specific method of resource model, and we will deliver invocation of this resource model method to Adobe IO events, and then it will be propagated somewhere. But
I have another. Sorry. I have another great question about two things. First, how to get logs that's related to the eventing, and will this system will have error messages with a great explanation about what's going on?
And of course, those are great questions, and I don't have all the answers for all of them, or at least because I don't want to overcommit, because some of those discussions are still in progress, and I can't say right now, because so most probably we will support some level of journaling as well, saying that if we would provide, we will store some messages and we'll provide the possibility to replay these messages if something went wrong. But what we are not going to do, we are not going to guarantee the order of delivery. What we are going to guarantee, we're going to guarantee the delivery of those messages being exposed from let's say, Adobe Commerce monolith, so that we may guarantee that the order is placed on Adobe Commerce site will be definitely delivered to either App Builder or to external order management system if the webhook is being used. But this is what we can guarantee. But we cannot guarantee that the order A which happen earlier than order B will be delivered earlier to this order management system. That's why, that's why we want to encourage again to use idempotency for orders and for processing mechanism which you guys have. Regarding login, App Builder provides a login mechanism and login capabilities provide also capabilities of distributing login. To be honest, I did not work with it much, so that I cannot say how good is it or how bad is it. Probably we need to. I mean, this also supposed to be part of the beta program to get different feedbacks and keep refining what we are bringing to the market, what we are rolling out to the market. So, but this is definitely part of the backlog, and because without distributed login, you can't imagine distributed system. So this is must.
Definitely, thank you.
Yeah, and here, for example, in Adobe Dev Console, you may see for the specific event how it looks like when you are either choosing to send this event directly as a webhook to external system. For example, if you want to send it directly to order management system, let's say you may have, I don't know, IBM Sterling, for example, or Fluent Commerce, right? And you want to send those events directly to those systems, or you may prefer as an option to send this event to your runtime, which is a serverless compute. And in the serverless compute, you may do something, and after that, you may deliver this message to whatever you want to deliver. And here, and again, we want to prevent chatty communication, so that they can, especially taking into account that we have, as you know, we have a lot of PHP service layer APIs. We don't want to expose everything, so that we want developer to specify what specific event this developer needs to be tracked. Like here, like save customer, save order, save product, and only those events gonna be exposed and gonna be emitted outside of the monolith. And I already raised this problem, so that because the definition of event is completely different when we are talking about SaaS services and SaaS infrastructure, because in this case, all these events should have one and only one semantic, because contrary to the case when we discussed previously, when one business action may lead to multiple events being triggered, like order placement on the level of model, resource model, and order repository, and potentially each of those events might be used for integration purposes. So for when we talk about SaaS and cloud-based integrations, we need to have unified event to be defined and to be propagated across different services, so that if we need to make the integration with Adobe Experience Platform, and we want to deliver order creation event to Adobe Analytics, for example, or Adobe Target, it should be only one it should be only one order created event. It should not be multiple different. So that, and you may see how we're going to resolve it. We want to pretty much use a similar approach as we discussed previously, but we want to provide vendor-defined configuration, so that you may see it here. So the vendor-defined configuration pre-populated by us, as a vendor, and the vendor here means Adobe, so that we would define the events we would like to track, for example, for order placement or for customer creation and so on and so forth. And this is how we would like to guarantee the consistency and to provide the only one event to be propagated across different Adobe-based services.
Okay, Igor,
yeah.
May I ask a question about custom events? So, because this is very important for us as the developers and like business owners, like tech advisors, architects, is to have a nice tool or maybe instruction how to inject a custom event to the service. Let me just provide you some details. What does it mean, custom event? For example, we need to aggregate information about the customer activity through the PDP, and we needed to aggregate from the backend side. It's like a common task, and then we need to send it, for example, to the Mesh API, to this app builder. So how can we do this?
Yeah, that's again very valid question, and I'm very delighted with all those questions you're raising, because all of those are very viable and questions we are thinking about. And moreover, like custom event might be defined differently. So right now we want to, and what we're going to provide out of the box, we will provide custom events being emitted by service layer created by third-party developers. So that for all interfaces under API namespace, so that if you guys, for example, create a module and follow Adobe Commerce development best practices, and you introduce your own APIs, for example, I don't know for what purposes, for example, for checkout customization, for inventory customization, and you put your interfaces on the API namespace, those interfaces, those contracts will be treated the same way as Adobe own contracts, so that we would provide out of the box possibility in Adobe Builder, in App Builder, sorry, to get subscription for these events, so that we will treat them exactly like we treat our events. If you are talking about events which are not under or some you want to expose some let's say, I don't know, resource model invocation which you want to expose somewhere. So here it's a little bit more complicated. We're debating internally whether we need to support this approach or not, or whether we need to be a little bit more strict and not allowed. But some of us who are very libertarians, they say that let's auto-generate everything, and if a third-party developer wants to expose any method invocation, let's allow to auto-generate, let's say, auto plugin. Sorry, not auto. I talk a lot, so that I started to say wrong words. So to allow auto generate a plugin for any method, for any public method, and use this auto plugin as a event emitter for this specific invocation. While and potentially it's possible, but again, there are some technical difficulties here regarding how to hydrate data provided as an input to this method, because potentially not every payload might be hydrated with a generic hydrator. because if you send the complex object with session with database connection, we may lost some of the data as a part of this API invocation. But so again, potentially there is a workaround. We can provide the possibility to specify custom hydrator, but we don't want to overcomplicate it that much. So that and this is also kind of part of our beta program. We want to see the real needs from the third party, from community, from partners. What exact use cases we need to support in terms of custom events.
Got it. Thank you. It's also very thoughtful. And I want to mention that we have 15 minutes left, and I have maybe the last question. And what about the event versioning? So will we have a guarantee that the event will be stable and will not have any backwards incompatible changes? Because from my point of view, this sounds, the structure you described sounds like a framework of events that we allowed to use in order to build the processes with the help of the Adobe Commerce. And I, as a developer and as an architect, I want to have some guarantees or protocols that will allow me to create a stable application. But again, I understand that it's not possible to have an event stable from the very beginning of the App Builder release till, for example, the next century. So what about this?
That's another great question, actually. And again, you know, like I don't have a good answer.
But it's discussion. It's our discussion.
That's exactly, and this is exactly internal discussion which happens right now.
Wow.
Inside Adobe, and that's another reason why we want to be very conservative. The perspective of exposing the number of events. That's exactly the reason, because ideally we don't want to version events. Because same as with GraphQL Schema or with any API versioning, another time introduces additional complexity. That's why we want to consider that all the events supposed to be forward compatible, and to make it happen, we want to support the minimal required number of events which we can, so that we don't want to spread the peanut butter across all platforms, saying that all the entities which currently marked as an API are eligible to emit events. But we would, first of all, we would like to start from PHP service layer, and currently, based on our experience, I would say that we never introduce backward incompatible changes to our PHP service layer. At least you may know that our REST API, which is based on PHP service layer, is versioned so that you have this v1 as a part of the URL. But I'm not aware that any of our API endpoints and any of our resources has v2, so that we never. And for us, this is pretty strict check, and we never allow to introduce any BAC changes to be released, to be rolled out as a part of our even major releases, which affect somehow service layer. That's why we want to be very, very conservative. But if you would see the viable necessity to introduce API coverage and expose some events, for example, for some specific resource model invocation, we want to consider all these changes as an exception, which we will, so that, you know, like it's like a Linux permission list. Everything is denied but allowed.
Yeah, and consistency first of all, and stability also, because for e-commerce world and for business, it's better to have three endpoints that are stable, and you know that they that they work instead of having a high-level abstraction with a enormous weight of customization. I agree with you.
But as soon as we have multiple endpoints or multiple entry points or multiple versions of the same API, we internally have to support all of those APIs so that it increases the total cost of ownership for us. Yes. Because we need to manage all this conversion from that outdated semantic to the new semantic and so on and so forth. And as a result, it prevents us to work on some shiny and bright new functionality which we want to bring for you guys, but instead we are working on keeping the lights on, which may be not that cool.
Okay, great. Igor, we have only 10 minutes left.
yeah, I have not much slide left. I would say like 1 or 2 slides that, and to be honest, my initial ETA was to allocate only 30 to 40 minutes for the presentation, and you may see that I failed miserably to accomplish this goal, but at least I hope that we had a great discussion. At least great. I'm very, very delighted and you raise and ask, and yeah, this is exactly all the questions we're thinking about.
And may I ask one last question, because
sure,
for me it's very, very important about the sandbox. So will we have an ability to configure a sandbox and test all those events like in the developer modes, when we have full access to the debug information, or when we can just see what's going on under the hood? So not a production mode, but a developer mode for a builder with a sandbox.
Yeah, App Builder provides you the possibility to work with 2 environments, staging and production, so that you may do it in staging environment and you may play with your events there.
So then great. And I do not have any questions right now.
Okay. We actually have some new questions in the chat. So yeah, Alexander, if you could go, or Igor, maybe if you could go through them. It seems like they're pretty heavy questions that might be super interesting for the audience.
Igor, it's for you.
Can you please help me reading them, because I don't want to switch the screen.
Definitely. Bogdan, can you please assist, because I need to drink some water?
Sure. So the first one is, what about good support from Adobe? Any SLAs? Seems like we take over a lot of work to Adobe, and historically we cannot rely on Magento support.
Probably I need some refinement here regarding SLA for specifically for what, for Adobe Commerce, or for this new functionality and which is going to be delivered.
Yeah, so if Stepan could clarify on that, yeah, I think this would help to answer the question better. But meanwhile, there is a second question. So the second one is, what should usually Magento PHP developers learn to keep up with upcoming changes? Recommendations like JavaScript, TypeScript, Node.js, GraphQL, GraphQL Mesh, anything else?
Those all are very valuable technologies, and we encourage you to add all those technologies to your personal to-do list for education. And I would say that currently the whole competition between different commerce evolutions, it's a complete environment. And it's not only Adobe who introduces this. Definitely, from some standpoint, it might be considered as a complexity because it requires additional learning curve. But even talking with analysts from Gartner and Forrester, and we had this conversation recently, because Gartner and Forrester analysts started to to evaluate platforms from the perspective of dev experience. They started to evaluate platform from the perspective of extensibility. And in-process extensibility anymore is not considered cool by analysts of Gartner and Forrester who represent the market and who represent the business side of this thing. That's why this additional complexity you may see not only introduced by Adobe, but this is a general market trend, because like commerce by its own is incredibly complicated domain. That's why which requires additional customization, all these commerce customizations are like snowflakes, like unicorns. They have very, very different, because all the merchants are very different. And you may see that other platforms do pretty much, I would not say that exactly the same, but the entry point, your expertise as a software developer required to work with those platforms, with commerce infrastructure, is increasing as well. So I would recommend you to add all those tools as a part of your instruments, as a part of your kit, which you use on a daily basis. Also, there was an interesting statistic published by Gartner probably yesterday or the day before yesterday, so that they draw the curve of all the buzzwords, and they describe by different phases whether it's just a buzzword right now or whether it's already coming to the plateau of success, or whether it's already widely adopted technology. So that you may also, I'm not saying that this is a direct representation of the market, but taking into account that such analysts as Gartner work across the market with multiple platforms, so that you may rely on some of the technologies, whether these technologies are applicable only for one product or one ecosystem, or they spread across entire industry. Because I would say that GraphQL, and moreover, even out-of-process extensibility, is not something specific to our ecosystem. I would say that headless frontend, that GraphQL, that out-of-process extensibility are becoming, if not already became, the industry standard.
Thank you for answering that. So Stepan clarified, and he's particularly asking about the SLA for support responses in the light of support from Adobe.
I know that we are doing some improvements there. At least I know that SLA is supposed to be improved. If you know some specific issues, you may send them my way. I will try to check. If you know some occurrences when this SLA is broken, so that I may check it. But as I know, I participated in some of the conversation where we specifically discuss how to improve SLA and generic SLA for across entire merchant, even existing merchants.
Mm-hmm. And I want to add that Stepan added some clarification that the question about technology is not to shame Adobe for complexity, but to know what to learn. And yeah, so okay, so we have 3 minutes left, and yeah, and Igor, it was amazing. It was amazing conversation, and I think it's not the last one, because we have 3 topics to discuss later. I mean, just monoliths to microservices, and about GraphQL schema and so on. I see that you have another sliders. Please proceed. And
yeah, this actually is the last slide, and I did not want to make the deep dive into this slide. I just wanted, take into account that I'm an architect. I wanted to show you some code, And this is how auto-generated gRPC contracts for our PHP service layer look like. So that this is auto-generated gRPC for order repository and for order interface. So here you may see how this event will look like in gRPC semantic. So this is proto. So it was just yeah. I did not want to deep dive a lot, but just wanted you to show how we are code generating and how the eventual event would look like. So it would look like the proto representation of our data transfer object.
Okay, great. Yeah. So Bogdan, please help me here because I want to ask more questions. Igor, maybe we will, maybe I will write down them to him, and we'll have answers later. But yeah, for now, really, thank you.
Unfortunately, I have another meeting in 2 minutes, which I have to participate in, so that it would be hard. But yeah, I believe that we already have a great agenda for at least 2 or 3 conferences ahead, so that is great. Yeah.
We will have definitely autumn, September. I will write to you. And then we will invite all people to our conversation. Thank you so much. It was a really great discussion, and your presentation and data that you shared with us is extremely valuable. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. All the pleasure was mine, and I was very glad to see and hear you. And thank you.
Yeah, and Igor, thanks again for a great presentation, great answers. Would you be open to answer on some specific questions that people could ask during the replay of the video on YouTube?
Okay, of course.
Awesome. So I'll be sure to forward them to you. And once again, thank you so much. It was interesting for me as a marketer to see something that will be rolled out really soon and partially is rolled out. So it was really interesting, not only from the technical side, but also from the marketing side. And hope to see you soon for future Atwix Talks.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So have a good day, and yeah, so have a good day and good evening. Goodbye.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be releasing the recording of this video on our YouTube channel. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out us at Atwix website. You can actually drop to the contact form, or Alex, can people reach out to you on Twitter?
At any time. Twitter, GitHub, Telegram, whatever you want. I will help you.
Can you put your Twitter in the chat tab, please?
Sorry, what?
Can you put your Twitter handle in the chat tab so people would know how to reach out to you?
Just like 1 second, please. Oh, where is it?
No rush.
Yeah,
no.
This is my nickname at the majority of services. So please find me and just reach out to me.
Awesome. So thanks everyone so much for your questions and your active participations. Thank you, Alex, for a great interview. It was really interesting for the audience and for me personally. So see you on the next Atwix Talks, and you have an amazing day or evening, depending from which part of the world you are right now.
Kyiv, Ukraine.
Okay. Have a great one. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.